Well, hi everyone. I noticed that today is that I've been understanding that I'm going to make something very interesting about what I could do. As I know, the Flash trailer has recently come out yesterday. As I know that it's bringing back Michael Keaton, that I haven't made a video related to Michael Keaton for a while. But this time, I'll be tackling the most relatable superhero movie known to mankind. And I call this one Batman. So, this superhero film was based on a DC Comics character of the same name, which served as a milestone celebration for the 50th anniversary of Batman, which was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Although it's directed by Tim Burton, just like Spider-Man 2002 came out on Spider-Man's 40th anniversary for its own milestone celebration, it was one of the most interesting installments of Warner Bros.' intentional superhero film collection, which was produced by both John Peters and Peter Gubber, which stars Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger, Robert Wall, Pat Hingle, Billy D. Williams, that we know him in Star Wars as Lando, and most notably Michael Gogg and Jack Palance. Even though it takes place early in Bruce's war and crime, what he depicts his conflict with his arch enemy, the Joker, in a turf war like no other. So, since Burton was hired as director in 1986, Steve Englehart and Julie Hickson have wrote film treatments before Sam Hand wrote the screenplay. But it wasn't greenlit until after the success of Beetlejuice. The tones and theme were not influenced by the 1966 series, but were instead influenced by Alan Moore and Brian Boland's The Killing Joke and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which adapts and diverts the Red Hood origin story for the Joker. Even though Batman ends up causing gangster Jack Napier to fall into a vat full of hot acid chemicals, triggering the transformation into the notorious crime boss Joker of the Silicon Mafia. Even though Bob Kane worked as the consulate for the film. Even though David Cope was also involved in it as well, there are some reasons why this film came out. Even though it was filmed in both London and Vancouver between 1988 to 1989, it escalated at a budget of $48 million. As a result of this, for some reason, with the help of Warren Scarron, as well as Charles McCowan and Jonathan Gems, even though it was a successful movie that received on its release date, when this movie officially came out on August 11th, 1989, on a box office success budget of $411.6 million on a budget of $48 million. And despite this, it was the highest grossing superhero movie to have ever dated that it holding the title until Spider-Man 2002 took the spotlight. Even though it's quite interesting, we understood what the backstory of this movie was quite interesting. For the pros, we need to tackle the pros first. As I know, the pros of this movie is that there were loads of actors that were considered to be involved in Batman. So, well, originally, I noticed that Harrison Ford, Pierce Brosnan, Mel Gibson and Bill Murray were all considered for the role of Batman before Michael Keaton was casted. But after Keaton accepted his role of Batman, despite being a controversial choice during the writer's strike of 1988, as a result of protesters who were protesting the choice, who were actually fans in disguise, they noticed that Burton did a good job trying to defend this movie from getting cancelled. Even though, ultimately, it received several Saturn Award nominations and a Golden Globe nomination for Nicholson's performance. within Burton's direction as well as Elfman's score, even though it was the fifth highest grossing film in history at the time of its release. Even though it's quite amazing, it also managed to beat Bill and Ted, The Little Mermaid, Back to the Future Part 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and last but not least, everyone's favourite 80s movie from 1989. Let me just say, Heathers, it won the Academy Award for Best Art Direction against all the other 1989 movies that managed to be beating up to the dust like dust bunnies. Even though, which in turn, I always think that Superman 1978 began the DC Universe superhero film series. But however, this movie began the DC Animated Universe spin-off collection, which began with the 1982 cartoon series titled Batman the Animated Series, which is a loose adaptation to this series. Even though it spawned 3 sequels like Batman Returns, as well as Batman Forever, starring Val Kilmer, and Batman and Robin starring George Clooney. Even though it's quite amazing for the pros, I noticed that Willem Dafoe, as well as Gene Hackman, and Robin Williams were all considered to portray the Joker, but Robin, however, was too busy doing Popeye. But for Gene Hackman, he hated being a clown, and for Willem Dafoe, he got rejected because he wasn't the right choice to play the Joker. As I know, the whole idea is that just because Sam Raimi hated creating a comic book world for himself, Burton did this to do Gotham City. As I know, it's kinda tasteless, but due to its bad qualities, as I understood about why, I've learned that just because in this out-to-date version you can find, the out-to-date version has tons of bad qualities. Like, the VHS has a Diet Coke commercial that features Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck that promotes a catalogue depicting Warner Bros. With the Batman logo on it, which didn't make sense that Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out a year earlier than this one, and its TV airings was censored for violence due to being inappropriate for little children. For some little children who are not allowed to watch superhero movies, thanks to the hand-buzzing chemistry between Bruce and Vicky, we didn't get to see Rupert Thor in this movie. As I know, Joe Chill was going to transform into Clayface. As I know, Clayface would have been the main villain of this movie. I noticed that Two-Face was absent because Billy D. Williams was forced to portray as himself. But he got put on a bus in Batman Returns along with Kim Basinger, because Billy D. said that he was the wrong choice to play Two-Face, and he didn't want to prove that he could imagine if Two-Face was wearing a big fat suit that would look a bit too inappropriate for little kids. As I know, thanks to my bird's eye view shot of the bad qualities, I wouldn't understand if I noticed that despite the bad qualities, despite the pretty good sound effects and solidly decent, creativity in this movie, well, I'm not going to talk about the marketing because I could ignore the marketing. Well, I'm not in a marketing mood. Speaking of marketing, I want to focus on what the soundtrack is. As I know the themes of Batman is all about how it takes inspiration from Zorro. Even though the filmmakers had Vicky Vale being depicted as a femme fatale rather than a damsel in distress. As I know, the actress who plays Vicky Vale is so like how I could imagine if Kim Basinger would later go on to be involved in Hollywood in that movie called Cool World. From 3 years later, she could later portray Hollywood as the main antagonist of that said film. It did star, I know it stars Brad Pitt from Fight Club and Bullet Train. Speaking of that, I would have imagined why Robin was absent when it comes to Batman to be depicted as a musketeer who wanted to bring civil justice to deal with certain criminals. It's kinda unique for an antithesis of a dramatic adventure like no other. Even though combining the cabinet of Dr. Caligari with Metropolis, it's kinda interesting. And if you combine it with Vertigo, that'd be quite amazing for its redeeming qualities. I felt a bit disturbed, but the score looks pretty unique. As I know, the score is quite amazing. As I know, with the help of Steve Bartek, it was pretty decent. And the album also had none other than Prince Rogers Nelson. As I noticed that Prince recorded an entire album's worth of material with Batman samples rather than putting on the songs 1999 and Baby I'm a Star, which were saved to another film for later. Speaking of 1999, they had all of his songs involved. Mainly like The Future, Electric Chair, The Arms of Orion with Sheena Easton, Party Man, Vicky Waiting, Trust, Lemon Crush, Scandalous, and Bat Dance. Wow. I could imagine that in that episode of Simpsons, I remember a song called Do the Batman. As I know, Do the Batman is like Batman, but with the Simpsons involved in it. Speaking of Batman, I can imagine why the Dark Knight got involved in a Simpsons crossover. It's kind of hilarious, but also awesome at the same time. And you know what I'm going to give this movie? Let me give you the true meaning of the movie. I'd say I'd probably have to make a right choice, but let me just try. Oh! I found the lucky number. I have found the luckiest number I would possibly give this Batman movie. Let me just say, I'd give Batman 1989 an 8 out of 10. Because I know this movie kicks ass, in my opinion. So much better than that ill-fated Ghostbusters 2, which is a disgrace to Scottish mythology. Yeah, this movie does succeed in what Bill and Ted fails. But, you know what they say? From now on, in my next episode for tomorrow, mainly on Tuesday I will do Die Hard, Wednesday I will do Akira, and let me not forget, I'll do possibly Daredevil 2003, yeah, and then I'll do My Neighbor Totoro, and then, after that, I might be doing another interesting idea. I will be doing the Powerpuff Girls as well as I could do so. And I will do Toy Story in case I get enough time to choose. But with that out of the way, this was me, Soho Karimula, signing off. But if you hit the like button and subscribe, in case you're all excited to see The Flash, let's just say, to the Batcave and good night, everyone.